So the next bit of content that I'm going to be reacting to is this post. Oh, it's a persistent universe needs purpose. I'm gonna need to use these, although perhaps less with 320. Yeah, nah. You're gonna be using those a lot. See, there's what we experience in the PTU, and then there's what we experience in live. So, I thought this was an interesting Spectrum post, where somebody was sitting there saying the persistent universe needs purpose, because I've heard this argument heaps and heaps of times. The title interests me, so that's why we're here. I want to read through it and see how this actually plays out, because I do have a thought process on this, because I'm one of those crazies that plays Star Citizen a lot, although recently I haven't played it that much. Yes, it is. The thing is though is that it's had some recent replies to it. Where is it? Sort by new. Or apparently not. Probably a nested reply. Anyway. That desperate for content? No. I just thought this was an interesting topic. So, this is a bit of a long post. It has probably been said before, but I do not live on this forum, so I'm leaving this as feedback for CIG. I know they probably won't read it. If I was CIG, I'd stop reading immediately after that sentence. I'd be like, okay, I'm being given permission. Playing Star Citizen and enjoying Star Citizen are two different things. Also, it goes without saying, but the stuff below is highly subjective. It's my opinion. You are obviously free to disagree. I'm glad I have your permission. Loops and ships. Thus far, CIG has provided content for the PU chiefly through implementing or modifying gameplay loops and releasing vehicles or equipment. The list seems fairly robust when one takes stock of all the content in the Star Citizen persistent universe. There are ships that can effectively fight, haul, mine, salvage, refuel, or race. Missions vary from chiefly delivery, ground combat, space combat, cave diving, and racing. You forgot delivery missions. Oh no, there it is right there. Chiefly delivery. Just say it from delivery. Anyway, players can log in and have wildly different experiences depending on the activities they choose to pursue. There is even the Spectre of PvP. Spectre, it's fucking right there front and center. And the ability to bump into about 100, possibly soon to be 200 other folks. This must have been around the time that the rumors started getting around about ETF testing 200 player servers. Moreover, additional ship functionality and mission types are coming. Soon we may even have missions that utilize ground vehicles to greater effect. The SC community is also waiting with bated breath for Pyro, its second star system. New ship mechanics are coming. This includes master modes and other bits. The content cycle. However, I do not think any of this new content will make the PU in any way more compelling for more than a patch cycle at a time. Hear me out. Time and again, CIG releases some sort of new content, Jumptown, Siege of Orison, some ship, racing, etc., and players engage with it when the patch hits. After engaging with the content for a week, maybe two, many folks take breaks until a new bit of content is released by CIG for them to try for a week or two. In fact, this is often the accepted wisdom on these forums and Reddit. Getting tired of SC, just take a break and come back in a patch. My take is thus. Even if they quadrupled the number of ships, mission types, gameplay loops, or star systems, the game would not be any more engaging past the week or two most players will use to check it out. They can put in hacking, data running, animals, medical ships, exploration gameplay, and so on. Each feature will grab attention for a patch cycle, then many folks will start taking their breaks. The PU is stuck in this cycle where they release some disconnected bit of content, we consume it, and then that's it. There's no reason to do it again other than to experience it once in a while. Some may say that the answer is the ship grind, but even ignoring ship sales, that is a ultimately very finite experience. Ultimately, what the PU needs is not more content, it needs compelling reasons to engage with that content over and over, even after the novelty wears off. But it's a sandbox. I can hear some folks now, but the PU is a sandbox. Well, yes, but even sandboxes need to give players meaningful reasons to engage with content. Yeah, I disagree with that. In fact, arguments can be made that sandboxes actually benefit most from long-term incentives. This is a bit of a stretch, but I have DM'd my fair share of tabletop role-playing campaigns in the past. Some were linear dungeon crawls or investigations, others were open-world sandboxes. I found that the sandbox campaigns required the most effort on me as the game master to motivate players. Since the sandbox was less like a ride they were on, the players needed to see impacts to their actions. They needed motivation to do X rather than Y. They needed to not just be presented options, but they needed those options to ultimately feel meaningful. In many ways, the Persistent Universe is like a horribly run sandbox tabletop campaign. Just a bunch of stuff you can do that feels meaningless. I can speak from experience that if I presented that to a group at a tabletop role-playing table, they would ask me to run something else. Come back to it because we're almost finished. Make it a game. I'm not sure what the answer is. Maybe now that we have persistence, they can start to work on personal habs. Then our effort could go into gaining and maintaining homesteads and operations. Quantum can possibly come into play, though I doubt it will do enough to motivate players on its own. I've heard the devs mention faction coming more prominently into the game for years now, still little movement there. Sadly, these sorts of things ultimately seem many years away. We keep getting new loops and new ships. I just don't think any of that stuff matters nearly as much as systems to make existing and future content meaningful. The excuse they keep giving is the person working on X is working on Squadron 42. It's disheartening. Please, CIG, focus a bit more on giving weight to player action. This is what will elevate Star Citizen from an experience to a game. Please make it so we are more driven to engage with the content past the patch cycle. Implementing something like this could go a long way in making the game more enjoyable for all the folks that are waiting on Server Mission and Polarises. At the very least, please talk about this more. Let us know what you plan on doing to make gameplay feel more meaningful and engaging. Alright, first things first. A sandbox environment requires those who are engaging in it to have the motivation to want to play within it. And to find that motivation, those players need to want to explore the sandbox, which means that they're going to have to do investigations and ask questions. If you are finding yourself and you're running a campaign as a DM and you're running an open world sandbox type campaign and you're having to guide your group along, then it's more than likely one or two things. One, the group is just not that type of player where they will want to investigate things, or two, you suck at being a DM and you're not engaging your audience enough. You're not, tabletop games are about, you know, the theater of the mind, so you're not being engaging enough with your with the party at that table and selling to them, because that's what you're doing as a DM. You're selling them the vision of what you're creating, of the world that you're immersing them in. So if you can't do that, of course they're going to get bored. Of course you're going to have to string them along and lead them along. That said, you know, sometimes you just have to do it because them trying to do something in your open world campaign as a DM, you need to stop them from doing something that breaks the game completely. Or, you know, normally the best way I've always found to be a DM is just let them go wild, and if they start, you know, bloody going too far, then you rein them in with even more wild consequences, and, you know, they start learning. It's like, all right, I shouldn't be stupid because the game reacts to my stupidity with even more harsher consequences than what I would experience otherwise. So yeah, like this particular situation here, like their motivation, essentially what they want, and I say this about a lot of players, and this is predominantly the PvE audience, they want their content spoon-fed to them. They want to be told what to do. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. The main issue comes on the developer in that if they have a heavy PvE focus, they have to keep adding content. And there's only so many ways that you can dress up a delivery mission. You know, take 10 apples from bloody one town to the other. Bloody take this goat from one town to another. Bloody, when you take this goat to that town, bring back, you know, milk the goat and then bring the milk back from that town back to the other. There's only so much content, PvE content, that you can push into a game, and this is where you start looking at the end game content. It's actually one of the reasons why Star Citizen having an economy is really important, and there are points that I agree with this person with here, like where was it? Saw it a moment ago. Here. Personal habs, I'm not too bothered by. Like, I don't really care about the personal habs thing. But having something that you can call your own is probably what I would say is, you know, something that a lot of players would find value in. And that's really what you need to be looking at if you're coming at this from a game design perspective, is what value can you add to the game that motivates the player to want to pursue that and do so over and over and over again. It's actually one of the reasons why you'll hear within game design that with some games they make PvP the end game because it's easier to create a closed PvP loop and just have it run the same thing over and over again. But because it's player versus player, you can't always predict the outcome. It can be varied, and that's when, you know, the designers can get in there and tweak. They can observe what's going on and tweak the dials a bit to, you know, balance things and change your outcomes. So, you know, this is one of those situations where it's like, this person is onto something. You know, Quanta does have a place in achieving this, but at the same time, like, this person throughout this entire post is talking about Star Citizen as though it's a finished game. They're just talking about it like it's a finished game, and it's not. Like, all these separate mechanics and things like that that have been added to the game, that's because they're still building it. It's not because they're incompetent and don't know what they're doing, although sometimes they give off that impression. It's because, you know, they're building the game still. So we needed physicalized cargo before salvaging could really be a thing. Because, you know, when you do hull scraping and the box poops out a box full of RMC, you need to be able to move it. And prior to, you know, salvaging and physicalized cargo, we wouldn't have been able to do that. So, you know, physicalized cargo was something that became a dependency for salvaging. That's something that I think this person is ignoring. You know, like, that said though, like, there are, I think CIG could aim for, you know, low-hanging fruit. I'm gonna butcher your name here, mate, but what? Rootavers? I'm gonna kill. I was about to say I'll call you Wheelbarrow with a W, but Wheelbarrow starts with a W. If you feel free to correct the name for me, mate. But yeah, like what old Woot here is saying. To find Dutch name hard for English speakers. Okay, yeah, I don't speak Dutch at all, so that explains everything. I'm mainly a miner, ores and gems alike. Would love to see shortages in certain ores and get asked by mission / increase prices to mine and look for specific ores. Yeah, like, I don't see any reason why CIG wouldn't implement something like that. And it doesn't have to be, you know, hugely complex either. It could be like, hey, the Arcot mining is, you know, running low on titanium because of fucking, you know, a vandal attack in this other system, and the UEE got fucked up, so they need to build a whole bunch of ship chassis. We need all the titanium that we can get. We're paying double the amount for the next, you know, weekend. And this is how much we need. You know, and just leave it going there for the entire bloody, you know, for a weekend or something like that. And there's a bar that fills up. Everybody contributes to it, regardless of the server that you're on. If you want to engage in that, fine. If you don't, don't. Then you can do a counter mission if you want. You know, Ninetales. Ninetales picks up. And then create a, like, a bloody titanium shortage for cargo haulers as well. Pretty much all the titanium's been rediverted. COG could do something like that. From a game design perspective, that is easy for them to implement. From a technical aspect, we don't know if they've actually built that tech. That stuff would make mining T3 ores more interesting as well. Yeah, like you can give purpose to, you know, commodities or, you know, materials that are not really that desirable. I'm gonna switch over to the face cam now. Like, I'm not going to go through the replies here because it's pretty much just people who, you know, people who I believe don't have much of an imagination. Because my opinion when it comes to sandbox games is that you have to have an imagination in order to be able to get the most out of it. For us, piracy gameplay has been one of those loops where it has been super engaging up until the start of this year, where they simplified it. And from that point, it kind of just started petering out. And it's not COG's fault in the sense, like, you know, they did this all on purpose. It's that they introduced mechanics, because piracy is a gameplay loop that doesn't have dedicated mechanics. It utilizes other mechanics to be able to achieve piracy. You know, physicalized cargo is something that cargo haulers, salvagers, you know, miners all interact with. So do pirates, because that's our, you know, what we're after. Combat is something that bounty hunters and pirates engage in. You know, QED is not a pirate only mechanic. It's not a bounty hunter over mechanic. QED, quantum enforcement devices, they're just a component, a part of a mechanic that anybody can use. And when you start thinking about Star Citizen in terms of systems that are separate from each other and treating them like they're Lego blocks to be able to build loops, like, a lot of the time they don't fit together that well. But for piracy, you know, you can make it work. And for bounty hunting, you know, in 320 with the combat logout timer, we expect to start seeing bounty hunting crews getting around with QED, because they know that even if the person tries to, you know, Alt F4, combat log, or do any of that shit, they're going to be able to get the kill. Because that's the main problem that bounty hunters have had, is that even if they use quantum enforcement, they couldn't get the kill. Right now, you think piracy is the easiest it will ever be? 100%. We don't have, you know, we don't have harsh resistance coming from the AI yet. We don't have reputation that follows us around as individuals and as organizations. You know, the outposts are still using hard armistice zones, whereas realistically they should have, you know, turrets and missile turrets around them. You know, they should be populated by more NPCs than the guy standing behind the desk, you know, at one of the, you know, at the commodity hub. And they should all be motivated that if they start getting attacked, that they all gear up and get ready to repel, you know, whoever's attacking them. Like, those are all things that should be happening, but CIG hasn't given that, you know, purpose yet, because they're still building Star Citizen, but they're also building Squadron 42. Which is a frustration if you've been watching, you know, my reaction content for a while now, or you just played Star Citizen with me enough. You know how I feel about Squadron 42. You know, it's a fucking resource black hole that is just preventing the game that everybody wants from being built. And I cannot wait for Squadron 42 to just be done in out of the fucking way. Because once it's done out of the way, everybody just pivots and they're all on Star Citizen, and then it's not that it'll get done faster, but it starts getting the attention that it needs. That's another thing now as well, is like, you know, what old mates talked about with, you know, people who would come in at the start of a patch, play for a couple of weeks, and then come back for the next patch. Quite a few Mongrel Squad members were like that before they joined Mongrel Squad. And what they found was piracy gameplay being engaging enough to keep them interested in what was going on, because it was never ever the same every single time. But it was also the social aspect of it. You know, like, you have to work in a crew if you really want to get far as a pirate. Like, you could do piracy solo. Cutlet's proven it, you know, Greasy Khaleesi's proven it, even Pro Finger Sniffer's proven it. You can do piracy on your own, but you can do a lot more and achieve a lot more if you're working with a group. That's why, you know, like, one of the many motivations for posting our hits on YouTube is to show that teamwork aspect, that social aspect. You know, we all work together, we all play together, we operate, you know, in the verse together. We have a lot of fun doing it, and the experiences are normally not the same. And, you know, people will reflect on hits that they were a part of, like, you know, a couple of years ago. I still remember the first hit that we did on Salty Mike, mic drop on the Mongrel Squad YouTube channel. I recommend you all go watch it. You know, blasting away in cyclones across the bloody hot deserts of Ariel to go and conduct a boarding action on Mike's bloody Carrack, and then watching it take off and having our sentinels come in and pretty much punch it back down to the ground with distortion damage, and just watching it like just fall out of the sky as we're screaming along on the ground. That particular hit, Mike, I think, blocks out of his head because he tried fighting back, couldn't, and then when he tried getting out of the turret, he fell out of the turret and died. So it ended up being shit for him. You know, like, it's his, the second hit that we did on him, Mic Drop Volume 2. Yeah, Mic Drop 2. That one he remembers. That's his favorite hit. Like, he still lost the encounter, but he enjoyed himself because, you know, he finally stopped doing this thing. And I think a lot of players, you know, do this now, where they take it just a little bit too seriously when it comes to them losing. Like, they're getting attacked by, you know, a group that outnumbers them. The gameplay is being interrupted, and they're getting upset that the gameplay is being interrupted. And what Mike ended up doing during Mic Drop 2 was he just, you know, went, you know what, I don't give a fuck anymore. Pulls out his railgun and starts going ham. And he had fun. Yeah, and that's the thing, Sorrel. And like Sorrel says it, he stopped being a victim. And that's part of the, you know, it's a mentality shift that I think a lot of players in Star Citizen need to adopt, is like, stop thinking of yourself as a victim. You're not. You're a participant in this game as well. Regardless if you like it or not, you have the ability to, you know, participate in what's going on and potentially change the course of what happens. But you have to be willing to try. And if you're not, you're just going to, you know, like, lose the encounter. You're going to have a shit experience. And at the end of the day, the only person that you can really blame for that is yourself. I always say this, there are only two parties that are responsible for your fun when you're playing a video game. The game developer and you. There's only so much that the game developer can do though. If you're just there shitting on a game, then it doesn't matter what, you know, what that game developer does, you're just going to have a shit time. So shifting your mentality and focusing on just finding the fun in the game helps with, you know, the issue of sitting there going, oh, there's no purpose for the persistent universe. And I know that there's some players out there, like there's some professional loops where it's like mining is just break rocks, you know, refine rocks, sell rocks, make numbers go big in your wallet. Well, piracy is find other people, move boxes, you know, find other people, stop their ship, board their ship, kill them, move their boxes, make your numbers in the wallet get bigger. But what we're really focused on is the encounter that we're having during that entire process. Like, realistically, we don't need to move the boxes, we don't need to sell them. Once we've pirated someone, we've got the, you know, encounter that we wanted, we could just leave it all there and find the next person. But for us, it's part of the process, you know, like going from start all the way through to the end. You know, because we are still in the testing environment. Even the live environment is a testing environment. So we'll test all the way through to the end. We find somebody, we'll interdict them, we'll disable them, we'll board them, we'll take their stuff, we'll sell it, and then we'll move back out. And we'll repeat that process over and over again. Just to, you know, see what happens if we break something along the way. And if we can replicate it, we report it. And it's all in the effort of making Star Citizen a better game for the future. So that when our great-great-grandkids are playing it, they'll be able to find purpose in the persistent universe because it'll be a flawless game.